Since ChatGPT hit the market, I have heard from so many writers curious about what my stance is on AI. Now, of course, there are lots of conversations that are happening around these tools, and many of them are well handled by groups like the Authors Guild and other professional organizations for writers. But today I want to dig into something that I have seen as a writing coach and someone who works with writers and ghostwriters to refine their craft. Today I want to talk about the real threat of AI. And it's not about copyright. It's not about stealing other people's work. It's about hurting your own writing ability. Stay tuned. You've been writing your memoir, maybe even for years. You know your material, you know what it means. What's missing isn't the story, it's the structure. And that's why we started the Memoir Method Book Club. Every single month, Emily Thrash, a professional writer and editor, teaches you how to read like a writer by breaking down a published memoir and showing you what it's doing under the surface. Your first session is free. Head over to pageandpodium.com/book club to sign up. As you might suspect, and as I know many of you are in the same boat, I have been thinking about AI a lot. Now, of course, this started when ChatGPT and some of these other programs were first introduced into our culture at a mass scale. And when they first came out, there were lots of warning signs that are things we need to be thinking about. For one, AI uses so much water, and this is often hurting places where water supply is already in danger and already short. Second of all, of course, it is using other authors' work to train a bot, which then is supposed to put out new original work from you. Seems a little bit fishy, and as someone whose work has been fed into those bots with no permission or compensation, this is also a huge ethical problem. And of course, the thing that more people asked me about than anything else is AI going to take writers' jobs? Now, all of these are big questions. All of them are being discussed on a public platform, again, often by groups like the Writers Guild, all of these places that work with professional authors. But as someone who works with authors who are aspiring to be professional authors, I wondered if I might have a different perspective on this. So I've really held off on making much public commentary about AI at all. I really wanted to kind of watch how things unfolded and really think about what is happening when we get inside the minds of aspiring and amateur, hobbyist, and new professional writers when we think about using AI. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the number one threat of AI to new and aspiring writers is not going to be an ethical concern, and it's not going to be that our work is stolen or that we're stealing other people's work. The number one issue that new and aspiring writers are going to discover when they use AI is that it will kill your ability to actually write. Now, I want to ground this in actual scientific research, although later in the video, I've got some personal things I've observed as well. But the thing that really made me kind of want to go this direction in this video was a study out of MIT. Now, this is a really, really recent study. It was a whole collaborative team of researchers working on this project, and it was experimental design. And one thing that is so helpful about experimental design is that when experiments are well designed, we are able to see causality. So we are not just looking at two things correlating, we are able to see that one thing happened and it led to another thing. Now, this study out of MIT, they set up their participants in a couple of different conditions. So some people were asked to write essays on their own. They didn't have AI, they didn't even have Google. Some people were asked to use Google, so they were writing in a little bit more the way that I kind of came through high school and college, right? We have some access to look some things up, but mostly we're writing on our own. And then the third group had AI, so they were able to use ChatGPT or whatever the program to write their essays. Now, what the researchers did was they had folks write a few essays in this way, whatever their assigned group was. And they took EEGs, or brain scans, to just kind of see what sections of the brain were lighting up. After they had been in these conditions for a while, then researchers reassigned them. So for the people who had been using AI, they were now either assigned to use Google only, or they were assigned to write in the very old school way where they had no type of technological support. After they had been in that state for a while, then they did EEGs again. The thing that I find so troubling and fascinating is that the group that was assigned to AI first had the lowest brain activity of any of the three groups. Now, of course, you might say they are doing the least amount of cognitive load by using AI. We all know that that's the case, right? But what's really troubling is when those AI folks switched over to writing in the old school way, their brain activity dropped more. Even more than had already been suppressed under the AI condition. It dropped even more. So what does this tell us? That when we are leaning on things like AI for creative expression, what we are actually doing is telling our brain that there is no need for it to be engaged, that it can just take a break. AI's got it. Well, you can see where this is a problem, right? Because many of us might think, you know what, I'm busy, or you know what, this part of the book, I don't care about it quite as much. It's not going to be as interesting. Let me kind of just lean on AI. Well, what we are finding now is not only that, first of all, yeah, the quality is not going to be as good if you lean on AI, but additionally, you might be pinning yourself into a place where you are no longer able to write in the way that you used to. And again, this is not just me speculating. This is not me fear-mongering. What I am telling you is based on science, a research study out of MIT that found statistically significant results that trying to switch back to regular writing after AI actually left you even worse off than you were with the AI, let alone where you would have been if you never used AI. Now, the good news is, if you have been engaging in the writing craft for a long time, the researchers also did find that people who were engaged in the writing without assistance, when they switched to AI, their brain activity did not drop as low as the people who started with AI. So that is good news. If our brains are strong enough, we can kind of build that muscle up and give ourselves a little immunity from this AI effect. But I'll tell you what, that is not something that I am willing to risk with either my career or my creative artistic ambitions. I want my writing to be my writing. So with that, I want to get into some more of the nuance, kind of how I have seen this exact effect play out in some of the different people that I have worked with, and in my own experimentation and the experimentation of my kind of collegial group that I'll chat with about things to do with writing. So the first thing that I want to point out is that one thing I have seen across the board with professional writers that I work with in their kind of writing careers is that when these folks have tried to use AI, many of them were really determined to make it work. And what they found was that it did not actually save them any time to use ChatGPT. And that is the first way that AI is going to kill your writing career. When we think about trying to coach a machine through this process of writing a book, this very, very complicated thing that many of us aren't even really certain we know how to do already, unsurprisingly, what ends up happening is that ChatGPT will so often take longer to learn how to write the chapter than if you had just written it yourself. Now, I've had several colleagues try this and kind of experiment to see how it worked for them, and I did too. And I found as well that it took me just as long to get AI to get any kind of a passable draft that then, of course, I was going to have to edit very, very heavily if I were going to actually use it, than it would have been to just write it, in which case probably it wouldn't have even been nearly as difficult an editing project. So the first thing I want to really caution you about is really pay attention to whether or not ChatGPT is actually saving you any time. It really might not be. The second, and I think related issue here, is that when we start using ChatGPT, one thing that I find is that many people, when they start to really heavily use ChatGPT, their taste in writing changes. So quite literally, I saw this in a client that I was working with. So now with this client, we were ghostwriting her book, and I was the managing editor for this project. So I was supervising the writer and corresponding with the client. Now, one thing that I noticed is that when we first were onboarding the client, she was very, very interested in checking out ChatGPT. Now, this is a time when it was kind of a newer technology that was coming out, so it was very fascinating. Lots of people were really just in there kind of playing around, seeing what it could do. And she had mentioned to me during the interview portion, when we're gathering the content for the book before we actually start writing, she had told me that she was really, really playing with ChatGPT. She was loving it for her business. She just really, really liked it. Now, of course, she's not a professional writer, but when you go through a ghostwriting process, you are also reading this work that a writer is sending you week after week. Well, what I found was increasingly she began to prefer writing that sounded like it was ChatGPT over writing that sounded like it was a human. Now, I don't want to go into all the details of kind of what the signs of ChatGPT writing are. They are there. If you use it at all, you will pick up on the sentence structures that it likes to use. And what I found was she started to see those as superior sentence structures. So these are things that can work. Of course they work. ChatGPT learned them from other types of writing in the wild. But at the same time, I can tell you that the type of writing she was drawn to, the type of writing that she was wanting the writer to create, became less and less about saying something authentic and more about contentless ideas sounding like they were powerful. More and more, she wanted these little turns of phrase that are really just empty. Now, as we went through this writing process, I saw this increase. No, this is not hard science. I do not have a control group, but what I can tell you is that this effect got more pronounced as we went through the book, and in fact, she was often feeding some of our chapter into ChatGPT and asking it to rewrite. Now, lest you say, well, but was the chapter maybe not very good? That is a fair question. I can tell you this was a quality chapter, and I can tell you after it went through ChatGPT, a lot of the uniqueness, a lot of the richness of her ideas got totally pushed to the wayside just in favor of having the ChatGPT style. Now, my point here is not, what a tragedy for that particular author. We were able actually to pull her back from that point and to help her find a more authentic way to express herself. But I had to bring up the fact that this was happening to her because she had not even noticed. Now, put this kind of in the back of your mind. And as you are scrolling Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever your social media of choice, I want you to look at the marketing you see. Because one thing that I have noticed is since I started looking for these ChatGPT patterns, I find them everywhere. And one thing we know for certain is that writers will write in a style that is similar to the types of things they are reading. Now, if you are reading and you are not even thinking about what you're taking in, you're not even thinking about kind of the shape of the sentences, many of us aren't, you are so likely to be sucked into this very repetitive pattern of speech that ChatGPT gives us and that now is everywhere. You will see multiple Instagram captions written by ChatGPT every minute that you are scrolling those marketing reels. So, the second thing I want you to be really, really cautious about is that very often folks who are using ChatGPT a lot will tend to reshape their idea of what good writing is to match what ChatGPT is giving them. If that's what you want for your writing, go for it. But I think most people that listen to this channel really want to make sure that their writing is authentic to them. And that means you have got to guard yourself in terms of what you take in and what you think is good. The next issue that I see a lot with folks who are using ChatGPT, these are often folks who are coming to me for consults. Either they'd like some support in their writing or they're thinking about publishing with us. And one thing that I see a lot is people have yes man syndrome. Now, if you're familiar with this term, I don't hear it volleyed around as much as maybe in like the 90s, but when we think about a yes man, that is a person that will just follow you around and agree with everything you say. This is an extreme version of people pleasing that is often really looked down on, as it should be, because it really is a subtle form of manipulation, right? If somebody is just constantly telling you everything you say is smart, everything you do is good, obviously that is not the type of environment that is going to help us live our highest and best lives or do our highest and best work. But ChatGPT is nothing if not a yes man. So let me kind of give you an example of how this shows up and how I really am seeing this hurt authors' books all the time. So one thing that has become really popular is to feed parts of your work into ChatGPT and ask how good it is. Well, as I said, ChatGPT is a yes man. ChatGPT will maybe tell you that there are 1 or 2 or 3 things that you should tweak, but mostly it's going to tell you your work is brilliant. This is a problem when it comes to chapter writing, yes, but it is a bigger problem when it comes to structure. I cannot tell you how many people have told me that they fed their outline through ChatGPT and it told them everything was perfect. And when I looked at it, everything was absolutely not perfect. ChatGPT, unfortunately, is at its best when it is pretending to be smart by agreeing with you. It will say what it knows you want to hear, and it will say it in a way that sounds irrefutably brilliant, but it's making stuff up. I know we all know that cognitively. I know we do, but it is so easy to forget when what you're hoping that it will do is tell you that your outline is so good, and then it tells you that your outline is so good. It's so difficult for us as humans to really put aside what we're hoping for and understand that we might have gotten what we wanted, but that actually maybe that wasn't really what we wanted in the first place. And that's what you have to do if you are going to use ChatGPT to give you feedback. It really can't. It really can't. It does not know anything, actually. It is just giving you words in the logical order that most people have thought sounded good when it gave those same words to them. It is a pattern recognition model. It is not trained in writing. It is not trained in structure. It is not a trained editor. It cannot do that for you at any kind of a quality. But the hard thing, again, is not that we have to train ChatGPT to do these things. It's that we as humans have to realize that if we don't know how to do a thing, then we can't have ChatGPT do it for us. If we don't know what we're looking for, we cannot trust ChatGPT to tell us what we're looking for. Okay, so that leads me really neatly into the next point that I want to make. And that is that folks believe that we can train ChatGPT to write in the style that we want to write in. Now, this is understandable, and I saw this first in the world of computer coding. So I have a friend who does coding, and he was kind of chatting about this, saying the same things that I just said, actually, that unless you actually know what you're doing, you can't really even evaluate whether chat is doing what you want it to. But the bigger point that I want to share here is that he kind of got sucked into this idea of coaching ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is barely coachable. So I have kind of seen the same thing. As I talked to him, I wondered how it would work in a kind of a chapter writing situation. So I tried to do this too. I really wondered, could I use ChatGPT and a paid version, a more advanced version, could I use that to write a chapter if I coached it enough? And then would it be able to retain that coaching to write another chapter, right? So could I, in other words, get it to be more efficient if I used it over and over for the same types of task? Well, let me tell you what, I worked with chat to do that. In the past, I've worked with writing assistants to do that. I would fire any writing assistant that was as bad at being trained as ChatGPT. So what do I mean by this? Well, what I mean is that as we tell ChatGPT to do things, sometimes it does them, sometimes it doesn't. For instance, I might put in a transcript of me recording myself telling a particular story. In fact, this is what I did into ChatGPT. And then I might say, keep as much of the original language as you can, but rewrite it to be a more interesting story. Sometimes it can do that. Sometimes it does a pretty good job. And sometimes you will feed in a story you told and you will have no idea where the details it is using came from. You didn't say them. You haven't ever said them in the past. They are not on the internet. No one knows. ChatGPT just makes stuff up. Well, if you have done this type of play with this tool before, you will know exactly what happens. I will say back, ChatGPT, why did you do that? I explicitly told you not to make stuff up. And it will say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I was wrong. I won't do it again. You deserve more. Every bullshit excuse that anyone that you would never ever put up with working for you in a company, in your personal life, anywhere, you would never put up with that. But for some reason, we're so impressed at what ChatGPT can do that we will allow it to continue making mistakes and to continue telling us it's so sorry and it won't do it again. It is ununderstandable. But again, this is not really an issue with ChatGPT. This is an issue with us as humans looking at what's happening and realizing that we are on a treadmill, not only headed nowhere with the thing we're trying to do, but additionally training ourselves to be worse at doing these jobs, as that study out of MIT demonstrated. So we have to stop doing this. We as humans have to realize that AI is not human. It is not going to behave in the same types of ethical ways that we might expect a human to. It will not behave with any type of loyalty. It literally does not have a memory. It is not thinking. It just looks like it is. And we as humans have to be the ones to know that that's what's happening, because it will never admit that to us. It will never warn us about that. We as humans have to see that AI is not human. AI is not just a replacement for us. It is something entirely different. And we have to do this before we get so used to the AI voice that we again start to prefer it. So those are kind of my main concerns when it comes to your actual writing abilities, but I want to share a couple of other things, and this last one is really, really important, so hang with me for a bit. I want to share a couple industry things and one kind of takeaway. The first industry thing, keep in mind that when you put your writing into ChatGPT, first draft, second draft, raw material, whatever it is, you are absolutely training the future bots. It is your work, it is your production that is going into feeding those bots, and you are not getting any kind of compensation or acknowledgement for that. In fact, if you are using paid ChatGPT, you are paying them to feed their bots. Now, before y'all head down to the comments, I know that I'm on the edge of a conspiracy here. We are told that in the terms of service, our stuff is not being stored in X and Y and Z way. But do you really trust that? Do you trust that your precious expression is not being taken from you just because it was in a terms of service? I don't trust that at all, and I'm not sure you should either. So I do think that as writers, we need to be a little bit careful of where we're putting our energy and if we're putting our energy into something that is ultimately harming us. So that's the first industry thing. Second industry thing is a little bit hairier, and that is that when you self-publish a book right now in 2025, if you go through KDP, the Amazon platform, it's going to ask you whether you used AI at all on the cover, on the content, anything. It's very, very clear about what it's asking. You don't have to check that, but if you used AI, you probably should. And we have no idea how that will be used in the future. We already know that there are major questions and actually some certainty that AI written material will not be copyrightable. And that has big implications for writers, because in the past, you have been protected to a reasonable degree simply by writing the book. If it's AI and it's not copyrightable, we don't know what will happen to those rights. We don't know. So that is a pretty big risk. I personally do not want to be in that early pool of writers that tried it just to see how it went. Mileage may vary. That, of course, is every individual author's choice. But I do want to just raise that as an issue because I'm not sure it's being talked about as much as I would like in writers' circles. And finally, the last point that I want to leave you with, and this is a big one, y'all. When you use ChatGPT, I really want you to think about why you're using it. In some cases, it makes perfect sense. If you want your marketing to sound just sort of very on brand for marketing, ChatGPT is the way to go. But many writers, I find, and especially new and aspiring writers, the thing they want ChatGPT to do for them is to make it easier to write. You have heard me talk on this channel many, many times that we will not get to a place of feeling that ease and joy and love and fun of writing through the door of productivity. You cannot get there from here. You cannot start pushing yourself to be a line worker at a word factory and come out on the other end with something creative, expressive, and authentic to you. It simply does not work. So as you will know, if you are a listener of this channel, the only way that we get to that feeling of creatively expressing ourselves, having it feel good, having it feel authentic, being proud of ourselves for the work that we are doing, the only way we get there is when we go there. The only way we get there is when we get in touch with our humanity. AI is not going to get you there. We will never use ChatGPT and come out on the other end feeling like we produced what we wanted to produce. I promise you, if you are writing from a place of authenticity, AI is not going to get you there. But the bigger issue is that when we use AI as a productivity hack, the thing that we are doing is telling ourselves that we don't know how to get out of writer's block. We don't know how to get ourselves back into that creative expression place. We don't know how to be human. We are outsourcing the work of getting back in touch with our expressive self to a computer. Absolutely not, y'all. The more you tell yourself that you need these tools, the more you will need them. And I have a lot of concerns about this for the people that I care about, the people that I work with, for myself. But the biggest concern that I have is for this craft of writing, for this human center of expressing ourselves, of telling our stories, of communicating what we really think and feel and believe and see in this world. AI has nothing to say about any of that, but it is so dearly important to me, and I bet it is to you too. So, as you move forward, I'm never going to give you a yes or no, should do, shouldn't do. I want you to do what feels good to you. But I do want you to think about, is AI hurting not just your particular project, not just our environment, not just our social structure? Is AI actually hurting your ability to express yourself? Is it hurting your creativity? Is it hurting your writing? Because if you have not thought about these things and you've been leaning on these tools, I want you to think about it before it's too late. Okay. Y'all, I know this is a little bit of a darker episode, but I think it's a really important conversation to have. As we're kind of moving forward with Page and Podium, I do want to make a quick announcement that not only are we accepting rolling applications to the Memoir Method, our women's group coaching program for first-time memoir authors, I also want to let you know that we have a new project starting right now that is called the Memoir Method Book Club. Now, in this book club, my right hand, Emily Thrash, is going to lead you through a new memoir every single month, help you see what makes that book tick, what helps the reader to get engrossed in it, what are the elements that that author has very intentionally put into that book to help you understand their story. And when we read books like this, when we are guided through the actual pieces of the structure, what makes the book work, we are reading like a writer. And reading like a writer is the best way to become a writer. So y'all, let's ditch ChatGPT and start picking up these books that we love and admire so much so that we can move our own work and the work of being human forward. Happy writing. You know that feeling when a book just hits you? Not because the story is wild, but because it's shaped so intentionally that it almost makes you rethink your own story. You finish that last page and think, how did they do that? The structure, the honesty, the clarity. There's something under the surface that you just can't put your finger on. And the reason is, unless someone shows you how memoirs actually work, it's hard to translate that inspiration into your own writing. And that's exactly why we created the Memoir Method Monthly Book Club. If you want to join Emily Thrash every single month to dig into an exemplary memoir and figure out what's happening under the surface, head over to pageandpodium.com/book club. Your first month is free, and we can't wait to welcome you to the group.